Wonderful.
Thank you.
On that lovely note, I'm Rosie and welcome to cuppa Tea Time. That is a working title. We haven't yet kind of settled on a good name, maybe another pun. Maybe you'd like to suggest a good name for us. And this format, which is just some good old chats, a good yarn with some of our local characters and musicians, artists, people of note, of no note at all. I think that the no note of all is what I'm most interested in. Why are people interesting? I don't know. But our first very interesting person that we're going to talk to is a Geraldton local, and it's Darcy Hay.
Hello. Hello.
How good is Darcy? You might have seen him around town playing gigs. Darcy, I think, actually was also a cadet at the paper for a few years.
Yes, I did my stint at the Geraldton Guardian and the Northern Guardian up in Carnarvon.
Yeah, right. So he's only young, but he's already had this great life, and I'm hoping that we can get into talking a little bit about that. We're going to talk a bit about Darcy, the man behind the music, and of course enjoy some of this beautiful instrument we've got before us. So maybe let's start. You know, I've said that you're a man of many talents, but how did you end up in Geraldton?
Born here.
That's very easy.
Yes, it was probably one of the easier things that I've done, from what I can recollect, which is not an awful lot. Born up here at the regional hospital and have pretty well spent my entire life up here, besides for a stint in Carnarvon working for the paper, and then Karratha a couple of years ago. Yeah, but right. I always get drawn back to Geraldton. Yeah, you hear that a lot, don't you? People, you do. People try and leave Geraldton, and then, you know, they're always coming back. And there's a few different pull factors, I think. For a lot of people, it may be the family connections or just the sheer size. Geraldton's quite good in terms of being not too large, not too small, and not too far from Perth.
Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? I first came up to Geraldton in 2012, and then I came up again in 2013, and I was going to be here just for 6 weeks. And sort of a couple of years later, I'm still here. And I think that's one of the common themes of this place, is that people are drawn to it, you know, for whatever reason, and they stay here for a whole different range of reasons. Why do you stay here? Family is one big reason. It's a little bit hard to leave my dogs behind if I was going to go anywhere else. I'm so glad that you think like that. Like, some people don't think that dogs are family, and I will actively fight those people.
No, I probably would fight them by your side. They're one of the more important members of the family to consider, because they can't understand the reasoning. If you've got parents or children or someone like that who you might have to leave to go to work, at least you've got the chance to explain to them in some kind of logical term why it is that you're going and that you'll be back at a certain time. But for a dog, you can't get that through to them, and it can be very damaging to them, which I found when I worked away up north, that it was not a very good thing for my beautiful little boy.
Oh, I just, like, everything else aside, I feel like we've just really connected on a dog level. Like, I mean, you can see from my jumper, I'm a bit of an animal fan, and have been talking about starting an animal rescue farm in my retirement years, but this is about you, not me. So we know why you stay in Geraldton, but so you grew up in Geraldton, you went to school?
Yeah, that's right, Geraldton Primary School and all that. Yep.
And you went to just the senior high school?
No, I got a scholarship to grammar school.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Fancy.
Yeah. He's a fancy boy, our Darcy. And were you a musician through high school?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I was. I started playing guitar probably when I was about 10 or 11, so back in primary school. As a story that I do like to tell a little bit, nicked my sister's guitar, essentially. She was taking lessons up at the John Wilcock, as it was called back then. Yeah. And she had one of those little A4 sort of books filled with tablature exercises and that kind of thing. From memory, she wasn't particularly dedicated, but I wanted to be a guitarist for whatever reason, and so I sort of used to liberate that book every now and then when she wasn't around, knowing that she'd get a little bit jealous if she knew that I was poaching her book and teaching myself up on guitar. So after, I suppose, 6 months of sneakily learning the guitar from this book, I was discovered, and much to my delight, an enduring
gratitude?
Plus. Yes, gratitude. Yes, my parents didn't punish me for it. They said, I would probably better get him a little guitar and let him learn. It's a bit hard to punish him for being enthusiastic about learning. Yeah, so my sister probably wasn't too pleased about that, but she came to reconcile herself with the idea. And from there, from about the age of 10 or so, it's just been one of those labours of love that I can't get away from. Yeah. During high school, I played a fair old bit, a few little assembly gigs and that kind of thing. Yeah. And started writing again in high school as well. Yeah, cool. And did you ever get any lessons
at all?
I had lessons for a little while from a bloke called Frank Connor, who I think a lot of guitarists in Geraldton owe a fair bit to, old Frank. But largely just sort of by ear, fumbling around and seeing what works and what definitely doesn't work.
Yeah. And so some of those high school gigs, like at assemblies, like were you accompanying people? Were you just like sitting there playing solo?
I can only ever recall playing solo.
Wow.
Yep.
Gosh, I don't think I've ever met a teenager who was like, yeah, I'm just going to get up at school assembly and like play solo guitar. What did you play? Like blues or?
It was an instrumental piece. The one piece that I can really remember was an instrumental piece, sort of probably modelled on my love of progressive metal at the time, actually. Tool was a song sort of in the vein of Tool.
Wow.
Vaguely sort of Arabic piece with the scales that I was using and that.
Yeah, right.
I can't recall the name of it, but I do recall that it was a fairly...
Can you still play it?
Sort of. I think it revolved around this sort of thing, and then something sort of vaguely like that.
Man, I wish that I'd been in those assemblies and just been like, watch that. It must have been, like, were you ever nervous?
Oh, yes. I'm nervous all the time with music. I'm very nervous before coming down here. No, that's something that I don't think will ever leave me. And a lot of musos seem to have that problem too.
Yeah.
It's sort of a bit of negative self-talk before you get on stage, and then when you do, you find a lot of that trepidation sort of washing away in the moment of being there. A bit of a thing where you're in the moment, you can't run, so you just sort of groove with it.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. That's nice. And so you've come to music, but did you get into music straight out of school?
Actually, during school I was a guitar teacher. We had to do work experience in year 10, I think, and I was lucky enough to jag Opus Music. So a week of doing a little bit of work down there, and by the end of it, Ash Collins had given me a job teaching guitar after school at that stage, and then for a little while after I finished school too, doing tuition with people right from, kids sort of 5 or 6, that kind of thing, up to one bloke I remember quite fondly who was about 80 years old.
Wow.
And it was very satisfying. There's something quite eternally gratifying about seeing the light in somebody's eyes when they pick up something that they've been labouring over for quite some time. They get it down pat, and the feeling of accomplishment that they seem to exude when they've got it. As though all of that practice has paid off and they've sort of broken through a barrier, and the joy that they have is a remarkable, remarkable thing. It's very, very potent to sit back and see them so happy with themselves.
Yeah. I want to jump a little bit to what you've done outside of music, because I think that what I know of you as an artist, that life actually informs a lot of your writing. And so we talked a bit about you going to the paper. Was that the first thing that you sort of did after school?
I did a bit of work as a waiter of all things, which I wasn't very good at the boat shed restaurants. Of course I did a paper run when I was a kid.
Yep.
Other than that, it was pretty well straight down to the newspaper at about 19 years old, I think. I was just dropping off resumes to every business around. I dropped off a resume to the Guardian saying, I'll mow your lawns, I'll do whatever you need me to do for a little bit of cash. I'm desperate for a job. And they, I forget how they had heard of me, possibly through music, but that was a bit of a foot in the door. They thought, he's a songwriter, so he knows his way around words. Yeah. So from that, I started off writing, of all things, football articles. I'm terrible with football. I'm not a person who follows it too closely or has much of an idea of what's going on, but nonetheless they dispatched me out to do a few weekend games, and from there that was my foot in the door with sports writing, of all things. And then into a little bit of entertainment writing, which suited me a lot better when Sophie Elliott, the journo there, who's now down south, she went away for 2 weeks holiday. They put me on for 2 weeks as a relief worker doing exclusively entertainment stuff, speaking to different artists, and that was right up my alley. I enjoyed that very much. Then from there it led to a job. Yeah. There.
And so writing at the paper or working at the paper, why didn't you stay there, I guess is my question.
It was, funnily enough, quite a bit to do with my dogs. I was up in Carnarvon at the time, as I say, working right up until December 2014 as essentially the sole journo. We had a contributor, Branwen from Exmouth, who would send in quite a few articles, which was very valuable. It would have been very difficult to cover Exmouth as well as Carnarvon. But besides for her, it was sort of a one-man show thing, taking all the photos, trying to get the paper together by yourself each week, with the help of the sub-editors and the editor and that kind of thing. And by the end of that, the stress had built up a little bit for myself in trying to maintain those deadlines, getting a paper out without fail every single week. But more than that, my dog started getting quite sick, pining away to nothing. Lost a lot of weight and didn't have much enjoyment of life anymore, and the guilt from that in turn made me a bit sick myself. I started just feeling quite unwell being up there, and decided, it's probably time to quit this and move on to something else.
So one of the songs that you're going to sing for us today is about your dogs, is that right?
That's right. It's about my beautiful boy Treacle, the fourth, who died a little while ago now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, maybe we might hear that song and then we'll come back and chat just a little bit more.
Yeah, sure thing. All right, this is a song of my own devising called Sleeping Dogs, about my beautiful boy Treacle the fourth, who passed away coming up to two years ago, I believe. And this is in honour of his memory. Thought I heard the tapping, chatter of your feet outside my doorway today. I hear dogs barking down the street. I see the empty seats where you used to lay. And I keep thinking you're coming home. I'll wake one morning and find the nightmare's flown. But I wake up every morning alone. It's quiet without you, it's cold at night without you by my side. And it hurts to let sleeping dogs lie. We both drift like ghosts through this house, through this town that we used to own. I hear your sounds, I see you round in the shadows where the melaleuca grows. Falling apart, staying strong, heaving hearts, steady song. What's the difference when either way you're gone? It's quiet without you, it's cold at nights without you by my side. And it's quiet without you, yes, I miss you, little child in the sky. And it hurts to let sleeping dogs lie. Thank you.
It's just beautiful, Darcy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What's the name of that song?
It's just called Sleeping Dogs.
Yeah. I think that's something that I think a lot of people can find relatable, is not necessarily just dogs, right? But, so many animals are like part of our lives.
Family members, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is a sad reality that comes to anyone who owns an animal, that eventually there is an end to that deep friendship.
Well, your dogs are lucky that they've got someone who can memorialise them so beautifully and carry that legacy forward. And
it's important to me to do so as well. I mean, I loved that boy just like a son.
Yeah.
So if there's a chance to sort of keep his memory and his name alive, it's one that I do like to take advantage of.
That's beautiful. And I think it's important as a musician to be talking about the things that you care about in life, right? I mean, that's my
Absolutely.
personal view, but do you find that? Is your music about those things, or do you sort of write more frivolously?
Oh, inevitably it's about the things that I care about, to the point of possibly shooting myself in the foot a little bit, by sort of being too introspective and that kind of thing. But it's not something that I'd be able to do, to take any pleasure out of writing music if there wasn't some kind of deep connection to what I was trying to communicate, because to me that's the point of music, is communication. Even if nobody's listening, it's trying to get something out of yourself, out into the world. It's very much a means of expression and communication, and it wouldn't be true to that ethos if you were to write and sing about things that you had very little care for, just to try to sort of fulfil the trends of the market or that kind of thing. It's not a compromise that I'd want to see myself make.
So what are some of those things that you care about then?
Oh,
just
certainly.
A short list, obviously.
I've always had a fixation for standing up for the underdog.
Yep.
So a fair bit of the music you could call political or socially conscious, that kind of thing. Those themes do come out a bit. There's the old self-expression thing, feeling bad, feeling good, that kind of thing, trying to capture the daily grind of emotional life in song. Nature is certainly one thing that my first passion actually would have been nature. David Attenborough was my hero as a child, and that passion has been enduring. So I'm not going to say often or as often as I'd like, but with some frequency, nature pops up as a theme for me to write about and to think about. And stories, too, I suppose, would be one thing. Telling a bit of a narrative tale about different stories that you hear, historical events, that kind of thing. Things that I'd like to think are worthy of encapsulation in song.
I have this great memory back in 2018 when we were at Blues to the Bush, and you actually played there at Blues to the Bush.
I did, and I enjoyed it very, very much.
And we sort of were having this conversation around the camp, about where we were, and jokingly said that I think that the sign said we were on Malleefowl Lane, and we jokingly suggested that you should write a song called Malleefowl Lane. Do you remember that?
I do. It was, I particularly remember it because it's so out of character for me to actually run with a suggestion that I'm given. Most of the time if people say, you should write a song about this, it's almost like a instinctive reaction to the body. I've been asked to write about this, so no, I won't. But in this particular case, it came to me quite naturally to write a song about Malleefowl Lane, just about the good companionship that we had out there, and some of the more memorable incidents, like that bloke you might remember, who was not having a very nice time at about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it's always the time of night when things go badly, so I can sympathise with that. And the thing I remember about that song is that it was so much rooted in that experience of nature out there at Blues to the Bush, and it's something that I've sort of noticed, not just in your music but also in your sort of everyday life, that nature has this way of revealing itself in your writing and in your music. And you're an avid bird watcher. You know a lot more about birds than I'll ever know in my whole life. What is it about nature that you think comes so naturally to your writing?
I suppose it gives you a sense of place. If you're aware of the birds around you, the insects, the plant species, that kind of thing, it gives you a certain grounding in your surroundings that I suppose helps you to feel as a person a bit more grounded in yourself, to be sort of somewhat attuned to your surroundings as such. But it's a good question. I've had a few people now say, why is it? What is so interesting about birds or nature that would make you pursue it so doggedly? I mean, they're just trees, they're just birds, that kind of thing. And I wish I did have a more comprehensive answer about it, but I think it does get back to just feeling at home. If you know something about those surroundings, you do feel more at home within yourself.
And I'm interested now in how your love of nature, and that you clearly show through your music, and that sort of ideal of standing up for the underdog, how those two things come together, because I know that the second song you're going to play for us is sort of about the interplay of those things.
It is somewhat, yeah. Yeah.
Can you give us a bit of a background of how, do you see nature as an underdog?
Too often, yes. I mean, ultimately it will have the last laugh, I suppose. Nature's got a tremendous capacity to heal itself after some pretty gnarly things that happen to it. But yes, animals don't have anyone to speak up for them, and when they do have people try to bridge that gulf and try to put the perspective of suffering ecosystems and animal species forward, it's not necessarily one that is listened to. It's often shunted off to the side, that kind of thing, as being less important than human considerations. But as I see it, these species that have been here before humans ever rocked up have got just as much right to be here as what we do. And it is certainly an underdog situation, I think, a lot of the time.
And I think that your music does a great job of giving voice to those issues and those creatures. And, you know, it's lovely to have someone like you in this place in Geraldton. And maybe we can, as opposed to trying to talk too much about the music, we can just kind of let the music speak for itself with this song. If you want to give a bit of an intro, you can.
Sure thing. I struggled to give an intro, to be honest, because like so many of my songs, it just sort of came out of the ether with little rhyme or reason to it as such. But the backstory, for want of a better word, would be that I live in Beachlands, quite close to the port, and quite often you hear those trains going past, you hear them sounding that big train whistle, that kind of thing. And this happened one sleepless night where I was up and hearing that train blare out that long note, and it just got me sort of thinking about, I suppose, similarities between that train and the emptiness that it must feel when it's loaded of all of its cargo and goes straight back out there to do the same old trip all over and over again. To what I was sort of feeling at the time, a bit sort of sad and that kind of thing. And the words came of their own accord. I called it Carrara, not particularly because of that individual mining company. It was just a nicer title than, say, Gindolby or Mount Gibson or something. But yeah, and there is a reserve too, Carrara Nature Reserve out there, which I suppose gives it a little bit of extra credence as such. But it seemed like a nice title, and the trains had themselves pretty firmly embedded in my mind that night. And so from that came this song.
I think this is a really beautiful way to end our chat, Darcy. You know, that this song is winding together your reflection on yourself and nature and the things you care about. And thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you very much for having me down
on the
here.
first episode of Quarantine Time,
or
QPT Time, whatever our final title will be. So this is Carrara. Thank you, Darcy.
Thank you very much.
We've loved having you.
All right. Shall I just get stuck into it now?
Yeah.
Train bringing borders, breaking holes in my aching mind. Brakes squeeze are screaming, sparks dying on the cold rail line. No rest, no love tonight. Rust on my eyeballs, scratches like a rotten wobbling tube. Worry chokes a nightfall, hurting like a stone in my shoe. Sometimes I feel like nothing I feel is true. jet engine towing, carriages going down to ports. It's been a long night hauling hematites and iron ore. No dirt, no trees anymore. Too long since I felt useful, strong or satisfied. The air is so heavy now, it smothers the tinder and the fire. Sometimes I feel the best parts of me have died. Try and carry on your numbing, lonesome rounds until they fill the mining and they no longer need you round. No hope, no fear, just homeward bound. No hope, no fear, just homeward bound. Thank you.